Emmy Award-winning reporter and consumer advocate, as well as a former title thief, a guy who served 13 years in prisons for doing this very heinous crime. You also hear from a real victim of title theft, so stay with us, and by the end of this hour, I know you'll be a lot more educated and hopefully ready to protect your home and your equity before it turns out to be too late. Now, you know I'm an investigative reporter, and I love anytime I can talk to a fellow great investigative reporter, and that's how we're going to kick off tonight's show. Joining us at the kickoff of tonight, an Emmy Award and multi-award winning news anchor and investigative reporter who has recently been spending his time researching this growing crime of home title theft. He's my good friend, John Sommer. John, welcome back to the show.
John, it's always great to see you. Great to be here.
You as well. Listen, you've done this country a huge favor. You have really been digging into this. This isn't some illusion. This isn't some theoretical crime. It is spreading across the country. Tell us a little bit about some of the investigations and some of the victims you've met along the way as you've documented how pervasive title fraud has become.
Well, I mean, I've got tons of stories for you, John, but let me riff off of that article that you just showed your viewers called Title Pirates. I love that term because traditionally it's been called title theft or deed theft, or the FBI coined it house stealing, which I think is great. But Title Pirates is so descriptive because it's like a marauding invader coming out of the fog at night and stealing the title of your home or your property and then ransacking it for the value and then heading off back into the fog. You're still sleeping and you wake up and you never know that you got hit. And that's really the way that this has happened, because it's a stealth crime. It's not the kind of crime that most law enforcement officers and offices consider over time to have been a crime, something where they hit you over the head and steal your jewelry, or they break into your home. This is so stealth that it's only now come onto the forefront in law enforcement offices as being a legitimate crime. And it is a huge crime because, as you mentioned, what we're talking about is the equity in your home. Your home, which is your estate, something you've owned and built for all your life, is really up for grabs, and it's very simple to steal it.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. And I think it starts with the simplicity of how title pirates ultimately get the title. They're sitting online now. It's so easy. Talk a little bit about how the front end of this crime became easier as we move to a digital society.
Yeah, you nailed it, John. I mean, that's really how this thing is turbocharged, because originally, and I think you're going to talk to a fellow that spent a lot of time in prison, so he's kind of one of the pioneers in this crime. Yeah. And back then, you go down to the county clerk's office and you would forge some documents, and hopefully they would pass it, and then you could claim title to the property and then either sell the property or extract the value out of it by taking loans. Nowadays, John, it is so easy to do online, on the internet. Artificial intelligence has made this thing so easy to be able to forge documents, create fictitious names. You can pretend to be anybody anywhere in the world and put that onto a title. And for all the world, when you go out to leverage it by going to a loan company or selling it to an unsuspecting buyer, they think you are the legitimate owner of the property. And for all the world, the document shows that you are.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. And there's a new thing out there we're hearing about it, and there's a lot of promise for it, called artificial intelligence, but that's actually making it harder and harder to even tell a fake document from a real document, right?
Yeah, as I said, and the thing is, even if you go the traditional way, you can create all of these documents offline, John. Still go down to the county clerk's office, and you can get a notary stamp off the internet. Very easy to do, and everything looks official. And you go to the county clerks, and they look at it, and they can't question it. So it gets passed just as it did when the person bought the house in the first place. And then once you have the title in your name or fictitious person's name, actually, John, there are criminal enterprises out there that do this as well. I mean, it is just absolutely exploded. And I want to, for instance, Letitia James, she's the Attorney General in New York.
Right.
The Attorney General, Chris Mays in Arizona. They've only now just designated this as a crime, which is fine. But it's one thing to call something a crime. It's another thing to catch the criminal. And the bad guy is gone before you even know it, because once they've leveraged the equity in that property, they transfer it to a bank someplace offshore, and they're gone. And then you won't know about it until 2 or 3 months later, and you start getting dunning letters from the loan company saying you're not up to your payments on this particular loan. I said, well, I didn't take out a loan. Well, it shows here on paper that you did. You took out an equity loan. And then you're stuck. And then you're left with having to go through the court system. You have to hire an attorney. It is extremely expensive. It could take years to rectify. And then the trauma of having to go through this. And particularly the elderly are victims of this. But anybody can be a victim of this crime.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And once you're victimized and you find out so late in the process, it's at least a month's journey, if not years' journey, to get fixed if you don't have protection, correct?
That's correct, but you need protection.
Yeah. We're going to turn to that in a second. I want to ask about one sugar pill that I think a lot of people listen and say, well, no, I got homeowners insurance, or I bought title insurance when I closed on my home. Those are not going to protect anyone from a title thief, correct?
No, I mean, it's like, there's identity insurance, and you got a credit card, and, they might notify you if somebody's made some kind of a fishy charge on there, and then they can rectify that. This is something entirely different. When you purchase a property, you have a title insurance on it, but that only protects it up till the point of purchase. They'll say, well, there's a lien on here or whatever, and then they take care of that. But after you purchase the property, you're open. You're open a game for this kind of a fraud, and nothing can protect you unless you get a service that actually monitors the title for you and then lets you know if there's something going on. And I think, John, at the head of this, you mentioned something about a company called Home Title Lock, and I've done a lot of research on this. And this company, Home Title Lock, they're the pioneers of the industry, and they do three things that you can't possibly do yourself. You can't monitor your title, or even if you go down to the clerk's office and check it, the minute that you leave, the thief can take it anyway, so it doesn't do it any good. But Home Title Lock monitors your title 24/7, and then they'll alert you if they see something going on there fishy, and let you know right away. And then the most important thing is they will work with you up to $1 million to restore that title back into your good name. Otherwise, you have to go through the court system. As I said before, hire an attorney. It's extremely expensive. And this company does it all for you, and it's not expensive, and it's peace of mind. And I'm telling you, everybody can be a victim in this. It's not just, the elderly. You have an Airbnb property or a rental property, even open land. Here on Central California, where I am, I'm working with the local DA's office, and they've had a big problem with people stealing undeveloped property, which is still very, very valuable. And you're not, as the owner of the property, watching it. And they can take it from you, and you would never know it until it's too late.
It's really frightening. You mentioned one other step of the process, and I'm going to get back to triple lock protection one more time. But before we do, you mentioned the county recorder, and everyone said, well, why doesn't the county recorder do something when someone tries it? And the answer is, if it looks legit, the county recorder has to accept it. Right? There's not a whole lot of latitude of these county recorders to blow the whistle on this. They have to accept something if it comes in with a legitimate stamp, right?
Yeah, that's correct. If everything looks proper, they have to pass it. They can't ask questions.
Yeah, it's so mind-boggling, and we're beginning to see a lot of these county recorders. I just did a little news headline search. I think in the last 6 months, about 36 county recorders have sounded the alarm. You mentioned the type of victims that get hit. We know elderly and everyday people, but even some pretty famous venues have been impacted by title fraud-like scams. Elvis's property, Graceland down in Tennessee. I think the San Diego Padres Stadium, right?
Oh, that was a good one. They had a guy, it was a homeless guy that was living at Petco Stadium, and they found him there, and they had to kick him out of the stadium. Well, he went down to the county clerk's office, and he forged the documents to Petco Stadium and transferred it into his name. And the owners of the stadium didn't even find out about it until they went to take out a new loan on it to do some improvements on it. And the clerk's office goes, well, who's this guy on here that owns the stadium? And they didn't know about it. Obviously, they had a lot of power with local law enforcement and so on to be able to back it up, and it wasn't a big problem for them to rectify that situation. But that shows, John, just how easy it is to do. Yeah. Anybody can commit this crime. It's just out there for the grab. So you really got to be vigilant and watch out for yourself. And as I mentioned before, for most people, this is the bulk of their estate that they built for their whole life. And in particular, the elderly, their house is all that they have. And if that's taken from them, it's just a tragedy. Yeah. And there are so many stories out there. You're going to talk, I think, to Matthew Cox in a bit, and he'll talk about how he does this. And these bad guys, they have no conscience. Nope. They don't care if it's your grandmother. They just don't care. They'll do it, and they're gone, and then they leave a whole lot of pain behind.
They'll be 3-4 months down the road with your cash before you even get your first notice of what's happening. That's what's so remarkable. The good thing about Matt Cox, as cunning and as successful as he was, he's now on the opposite side of this, helping all of us to protect us from the future Matt Coxes of the world. That's going to be a fun conversation. John, you do... Yeah. That's it. You do such great work. You're such a great investigative reporter. You explain this so clearly for people. What a great honor to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, this is really great. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, you're going to meet a real victim of title fraud and find out how Title Lock helped her. But before we go to break, I want to share the very special offer that Home Title Lock has created. You go to HomeTitleLock.com and sign up today. It monitors your title 24/7. It sends you urgent alerts for any title changes. And if fraud should happen, Home Title Lock's U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix fraud and restore your title at no cost to you. And you're going to get 10% off with the special promo code that we use, JTN10, JTN10. So go to HomeTitleLock.com, go to commercial break here, use the promo code JTN10 for 10% off right now. Get that peace of mind. Don't wake up a few months from now and have buyer's remorse. All right, we're going to take that quick commercial break. When we come back, Jennifer Washington, a real-life victim, will join us. We'll have that right after these messages. Welcome back, America, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're partnering tonight with Home Title Lock to put the spotlight on one of the fastest growing cyber crimes in America. The FBI calls it house stealing, but it's also known as title fraud. It is a very real crime. For the first time, we've been able to bring on a real victim of this crime. But before we do, listen to a quick summary of her story in her own words.
When I finally realized that someone had fraudulently changed my father's title, I was offended. I felt upset, just disgusted that actually someone could just go in and not worry about anyone's welfare and just commit crime like that. Then when I talked to the recorder's office, it was like a slap in the face. The fact that there was no agencies out there willing to help. It was like, your problem, deal with it. It was kind of like the attitude received when trying to get help. Once I notified Home Title Lock that the home had been forged, the process was amazing. Home Title Lock took care of everything. Thank goodness my family trusted Home Title Lock. When fraud hit our home, Home Title Lock was there to save the day. Home Title Lock does everything they say and more.
All right, joining us now is the woman you just saw in that video, Jennifer Washington. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Good to be with you. What a great honor to have you on. All right, so when and how did you discover that your home had been targeted by the crime? I think a lot of people love to find out just what's that moment of discovery like?
Right, it was devastating. I was home checking the mail, and I noticed several mailings coming in to advertisements to sell the property, and then eventually I received a letter, welcome to the neighborhood. So I decided, let's go over to the county recorder's office, where then it was discovered that a quitclaim deed had been filed against the property. So once I expressed my concerns and advised them that it was fraudulent, the only thing they told me to do was that I needed to hire an attorney and that it's not their responsibility to validate the forms that are being filed. If they look correct, they complete the transaction.
No protection at that level. So you really are, at that moment, in a bind. The county recorder's not going to help you. What was your next step? What did you do next in the process to try to get this rectified?
Well, I did see that we had a policy called Home Title Lock. So I contacted them and advised them, faxed over the recorder's transaction to show them that it had gone through, and they were very comforting. They advised me that they would take care of everything. There was nothing I had to worry about. They reassured me that this is what they do.
Wow. That's just amazing. And that's a moment of relief after a lot of probably frustrating moments. When you leave the county recorder's office, you're pretty demoralized, right? Because you feel like there's no one there to help you, right?
Yes. I filed the police report. The police they wouldn't do anything about it. The state's attorney's office was interested in it, but they would not pick up the case unless the police department took care of it. So there was really no help. Even still, hindsight, the case has not been picked up, and we know who the person is.
That is amazing. I mean, it's a clear crime, and all of the evidence is laying out in the public, and there's no prosecution or accountability. How long from when the quitclaim was filed to when you noticed that there had been some fraud on the home and on the title? How long was that gap?
I missed it by 3 days, so I was actually really lucky, and it fell over a weekend.
Wow.
So I was kind of quick-witted with it, but I could imagine other people going for months on end not realizing anything that's happened.
Yeah, and your flag was the junk mail, right? You started to see these sort of unusual pieces of mail. Most people throw those in the garbage. Don't look at. You were prescient enough to look at it.
Well, it was strange because the house had been in ownership for over 30 years. So
Yeah.
why would we want to sell? We have not gotten it appraised. We had not inquired anything about the title of the home. But then when I seen welcome to the neighborhood, I said, wait a minute, this doesn't sound good.
Yeah, no, that's a big red flag. All right, so let's walk people through the experience when you get to Home Title Lock, because you actually did it. You discover the policy, you call the number. What was it like as you were working with customer service? What will other people experience if they're going to go through this with HTL?
Customer service was amazing. They actually seemed concerned with my, they were concerned with my issues. They comforted me. They reassured me that everything was okay. They took down the best of my best contact information, and they kept communicating with me every step of the way.
Wow.
They advised me that they had received the recording. Then they hired an attorney. They put me in contact with that attorney. They made sure the appointments were made and that we met with them. Then once it was brought into court, they advised me of every court date and everything that happened. And once the situation was over and the title was recovered, they sent me a thank you letter. There was no money asked for. There was no attorney fees. There was no additional fees whatsoever. It was one of the best experiences I've had in my entire life.
Yeah, no money out of pocket. If you had to front all that money because you were without Home Title Lock, you would have been, what, in the tens of thousands of dollars of expense probably?
Yes, definitely.
That's just crazy. Now, how long was the process once Home Title Lock kicked in? It takes a few months to get everything through the court system, right?
From start to finish, it was about 7 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, it was about 7 months. So imagine paying attorney's fees for that many months on end would be horrible.
It's enough to make you shudder, and your wallet shudder too. No offense alert,
Yes.
but they're expensive. They cost a lot of money. For others out there, I mean, I think you probably are like everyone else, which is, why am I worried about my title? What's up with my title? We don't think about the title after we close on a house. If someone's sitting out there today, what's your best advice, given all that you've been through? What's your best advice to other homeowners who are sitting there probably unaware that maybe someone's lurking around the corner trying to steal their house?
Right. I will be honest, as a working class individual, we have enough stresses in life. So your title is something that you don't realize that you need to protect these days. And the process is so easy. And then once it happens, there's no one there to protect you or help you. So it becomes this spiral. And I can imagine someone not having possibly a good job, a good home, resources to fight back. I could imagine a lot of people just walking away. Yeah. Because without Home Title Lock, I don't know that we would have been able to fight this situation and recover the property.
It's so mind-boggling. It's such an amazing story, and you really nailed it. The system itself, the things you would think, maybe the police or the prosecutors or the county deed people, they don't have the time nor the resources to do anything to help you. So you're really an island when this starts if you don't have Home Title Lock.
Yes. Yeah. The police called it a civil case, and they don't pick up civil cases.
Yeah. Yeah, we've heard that from a lot of people. It's really remarkable. Jennifer Washington, thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are to explain your experience. I think it's an eye-opener for a lot of the people watching today. Great it worked out for you, and thanks for giving us all of your wisdom.
Thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Yeah, it's a really important one. Great to have you on. Thanks so much. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get to interview a man who used to commit this crime. He's an expert at it. He'll explain how he did it, how he got away with it, and then now, because he's on the good side of this, how you can protect yourself. But while we're in the commercial break, do me a favor. Head over to HometitleLock.com. Use the special promo code we told you about, JTN10. Go get 10% off and get started on this journey so that you aren't a victim of title theft and you have the experience that Jennifer had, not the sort of ones that people who are unprotected are going through months and months later. All right, one more time. It's the promo code JTN10 at HomeTitleLock.com. We'll be right back.
Just didn't seem quite right. A neighbor had came to us and told us she was suspicious that there was people coming and going out of my mom's home. My mom wasn't there. She had been in the hospital. Unfortunately, there's people out there that would take advantage of that.
Local realtor wanted to make an offer on the property, and I told him it wasn't for sale. And he told me, well, it's for sale on a real estate website. About a week later, the deed had been registered on this property. My parents' supposed signatures were on the deed. Totally fraudulent.
I know that it's happening. I've seen it for myself. You have this beautiful home and you lose all the equity in it because somebody forged a deed, got online, put liens on the property. There's all kind of ways that they can do it. To lose our equity, to lose our home, it would destroy us. I mean, it would absolutely destroy us.
Those are all real victims, people who went through exactly what Jennifer went through. Some of them weren't protected. You don't want to be one of those. Welcome back, everybody, to this Just the News special report. Now, we've been taking a deep dive into the crime of title theft. We gave you a good overview with a great investigative journalist, a fellow journalist with me. We gave you what it looks like to be a victim, someone who went through the process, fortunately, was protected by Home Title Lock. Now we're going to turn to someone who used to commit this crime, now reformed and helping all the rest of us to be better educated, but he did the title fraud thief thing pretty well. He is our good friend, Matthew Cox. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right, let's remind everybody, if they've missed your story, 13 years in prison, about $55 million of fraud that they charged you with. This was a pretty easy scheme for you to pull off, right?
Yes, and that was a while ago, too. It's even easier now.
So walk people through it. You have a history in real estate, and you realize I could grab these titles, convert them, and be long gone, right?
Absolutely. I owned a mortgage company at the time. Not that you'd need to own a mortgage company to figure it out. There's dark websites right now that are telling people how to do this. It's one of the most prolific white collar crimes out there. Well, according to the FBI, it's happening more and more all the time. And I would go out, I'd drive through a neighborhood, and I'd find someone's house that I liked, which was pretty much any house that was in decent shape. I'd go down to public records and I would create a false satisfaction of mortgage and I'd satisfy the person's mortgage if they had one. And then I would either steal that person's identity, or I would transfer the deed, which is, of course, the ownership to their house, to someone else's name, maybe another stolen identity, maybe a synthetic identity, and then I could do whatever I wanted on the house. I could borrow against it, sell it, do whatever. I would have possession of the house.
And then your goal is to go take some money off that and then scram, right?
Right. Typically, I would borrow a few mortgages on that property. I would have that money wired into several bank accounts. I would remove that money in cash. And by the time the homeowner was notified by the mortgage companies that were now foreclosing on their properties, I was long gone. I'd been gone for months, in some instances. And if I decided to make a few mortgage payments, I could be gone for 3 to 6 months before they even were notified that the house was being foreclosed on.
Wow.
That may or may not even be in their name anymore.
Gosh, it's mind-boggling. I think you answered this once before. I think it's mind-boggling. How many homes did you ultimately hit, and what do you think total money that you got off of people?
Oh gosh, that's such a complicated question. I've obviously done this in the tens of millions, and that's tough. That's a tough question. Dozens,
number, though, right?
Over dozens of individuals that were harmed by me committing this crime.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is I noticed you touched on it on one of the earlier segments, was that law enforcement they don't want to help anybody, which for a title thief is great. If you're the title thief, that's great, because it complicates the issue, and it takes even longer for these people to figure out what's going on and how to go about correcting the situation if they have an advocate on their side that can help them. If they don't have anybody to help them, they don't have an attorney, then a lot of people they don't have the wherewithal to go through the court system to try and correct this property. And I think that the other person you spoke with, the victim of this crime, had mentioned that a lot of people just probably give up.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? On their most important asset, something they may have worked their whole life to build a nest egg with, and they just walk away because they don't have the resources to save it. When you did it, it was a little bit old school, right? You had to still go down to the recorder. Today, all the documents are online, and you could get the signature like perfect, right? Because you got an AI now, artificial intelligence. It's probably easier today than ever to do this, right?
Oh, absolutely. And nobody's checking the signature. I could write Mickey Mouse on the deed. They wouldn't know. And when I did it, I used to have to go down to public records. I'd have to go into the bank. I'd have to go to the mortgage company or bank and apply for the loan. I'd have to open bank accounts. I would have to remove the money in cash, that sort of thing, go to the closing. And now you can do all of this online. You don't have to go downtown. You can search public records online. Right. You can have closing. You can apply for mortgages online. You can have closings online, open bank accounts online, transfer the money online. I mean, it's much, much easier now. Fake notary stamps, you can order them through the mail. Everything that was difficult when I was doing it is much, much easier now.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and it's scary actually at the same time. And it's like the perfect crime, right? Because it's not sexy for cops to solve this, particularly if they're dealing with murders and other things that are top on their thing. The deed office is like, hey, I just got to take the paperwork. I got no say over this. And the criminal can find everything in a few minutes now. It almost is the perfect crime, isn't it?
It really is from, I hate to say this, but, from a fraudster's point of view, it's great because people don't know it's out there. They don't know it's happening. It doesn't get the coverage it should. And law enforcement is, they're, hate to say they're outgunned, but they're not used to it. What they try and do is say, oh, it's civil. That's civil. That's not criminal. It's absolutely criminal.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They just show you to a lawyer. All right, I want to ask about the very first time you did this. I think you're like 28, 29. You're in Florida. Tell us how you started on the very first fraud that you did.
Oh gosh, the first time I did this, I don't know if I want to. I won't. I guess I won't use his name.
Yeah, don't use his name. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I was driving through a neighborhood with a friend, and he had mentioned that he knew somebody that owned a house free and clear. And so I went. So I made a fake ID. I went downtown, checked. He actually had a lien on the property. I created a fake satisfaction of the lien, satisfied the lien on the property, and then I borrowed, I want to say, 3 or 4 mortgages in his name. And when the authorities figured out what was happening, they actually grabbed him and brought him downtown and questioned him for, I don't know whether it was 4 or 6 hours, but a considerable amount of time because they thought he was involved in it.
Wow.
Because I borrowed the money in his name. So he's sitting there, there's 4 mortgages on his property. The banks are all screaming, what's going on? They all thought they were a first mortgage, and he's trying to say, I didn't do this, and they're saying, we lent him the money.
That is insane. He's double victimized because first he's losing his property, and then he's the suspect for a period of time, right?
Correct.
Wow, what a crafty thing. Well, your story is a great story of redemption. And now I know you were facing, I think, hundreds of years in prison when you began cooperating. The last 20 years you've done, and last 10 years particularly, you've done a lot to try to help people understand and prevent this going forward. If your victims had home title lock, would this have been pulled off the way you did it?
No. I remember seeing the commercials when I was incarcerated. And I remember standing in front of the television thinking, wow, that would have been a complete game changer. It would have stopped me dead in my track because the homeowner would be notified immediately and they'd be able to go to law enforcement immediately. Yeah. And then, of course, Home Title Lock would be able to hire them an attorney and all of it. I never would have gotten through 10% of that crime. I would have probably been grabbed at the bank or at the title company. It would have stopped me dead in my tracks. There's just no way I could have pulled this off if people had Home Title Lock and they were monitoring their titles.
Shrinking that window to the notification really cuts the criminal off at the head of the pass, and that's so important. Matthew, thank you for what you've done since you've gotten out. You've made a lot of people safer and better, and every time you come on the show, we're a lot smarter. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Having you on. Thanks so much. All right, folks. Wow, just think about that. It's kind of chilling. His first victim gets double victimized. Not only losing his home, he might have been the suspect for a while. How about that? All right, we're going to take a quick break. Before we do that, I want you to go right now to HometitleLock.com and take advantage of this incredible offer. We have JTN10, 10% off. Yeah, you'll get a free check on your Home Title Lock. Make sure you check the $1 million triple lock protection details. It's really great. But you're going to get peace of mind, a check on your title, and that future alert and protection that comes with it, including that 24/7 monitoring. It's much better than waking up like some of the victims we've been talking about. All right, we're going to take that quick commercial break. We'll be back with another fun conversation, this time with FBI agents who investigated and know all about this crime. We'll have that right after these messages. Welcome back, everybody, to this special edition of Just the News, No Noise. We're taking a look at the crime of home title theft. It's a deep dive. It's something that the FBI calls house stealing. And who better to break it down on how law enforcement deals with it than a former FBI agent himself? Joining us, our good friend and retired FBI agent, Art Fitzenmeyer. Art, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be here. Believe me, I always enjoy being on your show.
We enjoy having you, and you do such a good job of helping us understand what this is. So you saw this when you were in at the Bureau. Today, it's becoming more and more prevalent. Why is it so easy for criminals to pull this off and also to escape prosecution?
Well, you know, back in those days, it was almost like using a hammer and a chisel compared to the digital age that we're in now. But they still were able to do it. They just had to get a lot more personally involved in going to get the records and going to move the transaction forward. But because there was so much money on the table, you know, it was hard to say no if you're a bad guy. It's like, you know, why do you do this? And they'll tell you that's where the money was. They could make a lot more money stealing somebody's house or trying to get on the title with them than they could by, you know, robbing a bank or doing a stick-up somewhere. So it's something that had kind of humble beginnings compared to now, but in the digital age now, and even I've been in it's my ninth year with the company, AI wasn't an issue, quite frankly, 9 years ago. And now we have AI, and the only thing that's done is speed up the whole process for the bad guys.
Yeah.
So they need less and less time to complete the crime to where they can actually get a check. And so it's more important than ever that you are aware of what's going on in the life of your home and your home's title. Yeah. And that's what we do at Home Title Lock, quite frankly, as you know.
Yeah, it's so important. And your colleague that comes on sometimes, James Finch, he was in the cybercrime division. I think it was in that moment when it moved to cybercrimes that the difficulty in catching and detecting the criminal became harder because they could get it done a lot quicker and be in the wind before anyone would even detect it. Talk about the shrinking time that a criminal has to pull this off and how that makes it harder to ultimately find them.
Well, the whole key in this whole scenario of title fraud is getting that first check issued to you. Because once that happens, you're gone. You're probably using a false identity at that point.
That's right.
You cash the check. Well, the check is, you know, it's all done electronically anyway. And it's moved to a bank. And even before the bank, you know, really finalizes the transaction, it's moved again offshore where the crooks, you know, go someplace with wide beaches and drinks with umbrellas in them. And you're standing in your front door trying to persuade the lender that you didn't do that, you didn't make that loan. And the lender is going to say, you know what, we're going to take you to court and get a judge to give us an order to sell your house so that we can get our money back. They don't want your house, they just want the money back.
Yep. And
it's called foreclosure, and it's a really ugly set of facts, and it gets very expensive for you to defend yourself to try to get the house that you own back in your name. The key here is you've got to stop it right away.
Yeah.
And that's what Title Lock does better than anybody else.
Yeah, the alert system is the key. That cuts off the criminal at the pass. You've had a lot of great cases in your distinguished career. Do you have a favorite case or a case you remember most that really shows how title fraud devastates a homeowner?
You know, there's one that happened almost coincidentally with me joining the company. And we got a call, and we were pretty small back then, quite frankly, from a guy who had been defrauded. He had somebody took out a mortgage on his house and took off with the money, and he didn't know what to do, and he wanted to know if we could help him. You know, and it was way beyond the time when we would have been any help to him. But I did try to counsel him on what he needed to do. And essentially, he needed to get an attorney to protect him because otherwise the banks were going to get possession of that house in a court order and be able to sell it. So he went through it, and we kept in touch, and it went on well over 2 years, I believe. And he finally called me back, and he said, well, the house is back in my name. And I said, well, congratulations. He said, well, that's half the story. The other half of the story is it cost me so much in legal fees, I had to sell the house to pay the lawyers.
Oh, my gosh.
So he won the battle, he lost the war. And you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, and the scope and scale of this is huge, right? It's hundreds of thousands of dollars that the thief is going to walk away with, and then the homeowner on top of that is going to spend tens of thousands on a minimum trying to rectify it if they're left open. So help us understand what's the best thing. What can a homeowner do right now that would actually prevent them from having to go through that horror story?
You know, one of the things I sometimes start out and conversations like this with somebody like you who's pretty knowledgeable on it is I say, you know, I have what I call the Home Title Lock $1 million triple lock, you know, spot quiz, the pop quiz. And it's just 3 questions. And it's simply, do you know what your title looks like? Number 2, when was the last time you saw your title? And then you get the same wide-eyed look. And number 3 is, do you know where your title is right now? And 95% of the people aren't going to even answer one of those questions, quite frankly.
They're going to be 0 for 3.
And the bad news is, the bad guys know you can't answer those questions. They know you are staring in this camera, trying to figure out if there is an answer for those questions. And the other bad news is, the bad guys know that since you don't know that, then you are a potential victim for them, because you won't figure this out until the money's on that island with the sandy beaches that I talked about. Yeah. So you need to make sure that you have some way of knowing the answer to those 3 questions. You know, do you know where it is? Have you seen it? You know, when was the last time you saw it? You know, I had one guy say to me, he said, you know, I've seen it. He said, in fact, when we closed, we got all 150 or 200 pages of documents. We signed and initialed each one. And he said, I'm pretty sure it was in there 12 years ago. And I said, that's not going to help you today.
No, it's not.
You need to know your title is moment to moment. And what you need to do is sign up right now for Home Title Lock. We have our $1 million triple lock protection that we give to you. It couldn't be a better deal. Pennies a day. And what you need to do is sign up right now, because the other thing that you get here that we don't exactly, promote loudly enough is you get a copy of that title.
Folks, don't be one of those persons who doesn't know where their title, when a thief knows where your title is because they found it on cyberspace. Take advantage of this incredible offer. Go to HometitleLock.com right now. Use the JTN10 promo code. Get yourself protected. Get that peace of mind. Don't let it go past tonight. All right, we're going to take one more commercial break, and then we'll be right back for one final thought before we close out for the weekend. Welcome back, America. Over the last hour, you've heard some testimonies about Home Title Lock and how it can protect you and your home from the crime of home title theft. And who better to talk more about that than title theft education expert from Home Title Lock, our good friend, Natalie Dominguez. Natalie, welcome back.
Hi, John. It's so great to be back with you guys. You know, being able to kind of share these stories and really give your audience a good understanding of what exactly is going on, because it feels like our normal mainstream news kind of doesn't focus on the things that really are affecting us individually, right? A lot of it's focusing on kind of these overarching stories that are keeping people interested. But, you know, real people are being affected. Real stories are happening. You know, hot off the press, 4 people in New York right now are being prosecuted and haven't even gone through all of their full trial yet for falsified documents in 2023 that they filed with the New York City Registrar's Office, illegally transferring the ownership of only 3 properties, but valued over $3 million, and took out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and selling one of the properties. And it's really sad. One of the targets was a 76-year-old woman from Queens. They transferred her house. They falsified her sister's signature, who was a co-owner. You know, no one there for her. Another one was a mother and daughter. They transferred the documents to one of the co-conspirators' companies. They sold hers behind her back for $600,000. And
wow.
I think, you know, a couple of the important things to know here. One, the main conspirator here was a real estate agent, and we're seeing this more and more of these people that are doing this for a living. You know, you talk to Matt Cox, he was a mortgage broker. You know, they have kind of understanding, and we're seeing these people group together with co-conspirators to make this like an unwinding process of all these different people involved. And a lot of people don't realize how hard that it is to unwind in the long term. It's really hard for people.
Jennifer, at the top of the show, I thought really brought a lot of wisdom to this. And she said that, you know, thankfully she had Home Title Lock, and so she got up to the bottom of this very, very quickly. But even then, it was a 7-month process to get it all rectified. If she was paying out of pocket, she said she couldn't have afforded that. No matter what happens, this is going to be a long journey. That's why Home Title Lock saves people the expense, right?
Absolutely. And I'd love to expand on that for a minute too. You know, Jennifer mentioned, you know, there's no one there for you. They told her, go file a police report. They told her, get a lawyer. She went to the police department. They knew who it was, and they still couldn't really do anything. And I don't really think people kind of understand the process. You know, the story that I just talked about in New York, they're being indicted for all these things, you know, grand larceny, you know, filing falsified document stuff. There's no crime called title theft or title fraud. We call it that, but they're being charged for items involved in this crime. But if you go to the police department and you say, hey, this happened, this person filed this false document, the burden is on the homeowner to first prove it was fraud before anything criminally can happen, if it even happens, for those that are lucky enough to get there. She said it took 7 months, and yeah, we've seen that in California. There was a woman, it took 3.5 years just because someone brought someone to a notary pretending to be the homeowner.
Wow.
And it's all these different pieces and parts and things. And if you're doing it yourself and you have no one to fight for you, you're on your own. It's all out of pocket. You have to figure out what you're doing. You have to find a real estate attorney that actually knows how to go through this process, because not all of them do.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot for homeowners.
It's a big cha-ching, a big emotional cha-ching, and a long time gap before it's ever going to get resolved. That's what makes this partnership so exciting with Real America's Voice. As the education expert, we got about 30 seconds left. What's the number one thing people don't know that they need to know?
That it can happen in a split second. So you saw Jennifer, she was lucky. She caught it over the weekend. It still took her 7 months to unwind. Man. And that's with us. That's with our expertise and our restoration team. Yeah. Sign up. You guys get a discount. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of. It's better to have protection and not need it than to not be protected when it matters most.
Cyber documents and AI are just speeding up this crime even more. It's such 100%. An important time to get protected. Natalie, we love having you on every time. Thanks for giving us a great update, and thanks for this partnership. This is something I really enjoy doing. It's an important thing to educate folks. All right,
folks. Love being with you guys.
Yeah, we love having you. All right, folks, before we sign off for the night, for everyone, go to HometitleLock.com right now to make sure your home is protected from title theft. You get a fantastic 10% discount when you use the promo code JTN10. Title fraud is a real and growing theft.